Just so you know you're going live.
Point at me whenever we are.
Wait. Yeah. Oh.
It's live as soon as you hit the button.
Sure, you're live. Go.
Hey everybody, this is Grant Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com here in the studio with Propelio. Welcome to your preview of the Propelio Academy recording. Today we're going to be talking about backing into the deal and analyzing owner finance properties, how you can acquire with owner financing, and how you're going to look at that deal to figure out if it is a deal. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hey there everybody, this is Grant Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com. Today we're going to be talking about backing into the deal. Now backing into the deal is going to be something that you're probably familiar with even if you don't realize that you are, because our basic analysis that we're used to doing on properties is essentially backing into a deal. When you say that you're going to buy a house at 75%, you're essentially backing into the deal, because what you've done is you've said, okay, the house once it's fixed up is going to be worth $100,000. I'm willing to buy at a 75% of that number, and then you're going to be backing out your repairs, and that's what you end up with for your acquisition price, right? Well, when you're talking about owner financing, there's a lot more turning gears. There's a lot more things that you have to worry about, because you've got things like cash flow and things like equity and there's just more items to concern yourself about. So when you're analyzing an owner financed property, you've really got to look at the three profit centers that you're going to be dealing with. You've got three main profit centers that you're going to be dealing with. So you've got to really analyze the entire deal from start to finish to know whether or not this is a deal worth doing. Because a lot of times you may run into a property where you've got, massive cash flow and no equity, or you've got no cash flow and a ton of equity, or, there's all these different factors to where if you're just looking at one of them, you're going to pass up on what's potentially a great deal because you're not having your eye on the entire prize, right? So what I encourage you to do is download the CreativeCashFlow.com whetstone, which you'll get in the comments of this video, or if you're on CreativeCashFlow.com, if you're a member there, you can look in the download section and get it for you at that point in time. But this whetstone is going to be a great way for you to sharpen your skills on this, to really know exactly what you need to be looking for on each property. Because we do, like I said, we've got three main profit centers that we're looking at. Today money and tomorrow money being included in all of them. Cash flow is one of our big ones, right? Cash flow, it's what it's all about. We're looking for ways to get recurring income without us having to really go out there and work for it anymore. So when you've got cash flow in the mix, that's your tomorrow money. That's some of the money that you're going to be getting over time. Each month that the buyer pays you, you're paying off debt underneath, and you're left with a net cash flow versus how a rental might be, where you've got cash flow, you've got a gross cash flow and a net cash flow. With owner financing, the cash flow you get is your net cash flow, because you're not responsible for repairs and things of that nature. Another profit center that you've got is the down payment. The down payment is a huge one, because when you sell your property with owner financing, you're going to collect a 10% down payment from that sale. So this is today money. A lot of times you're going to walk away with just as much, if not more money than you would have from wholesaling a property. A lot of times people are getting a $5,000 wholesale fee, or whatever, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 in a wholesale fee, and you get that as a down payment on your owner finance deal and still have cash flow coming in the long run, right? So that's one of the great ways. You've got today money and tomorrow money, but you also have equity. You've also got equity in the deal, because when you create a loan with your owner financed buyer, it's ideally going to be for more than your loan on the acquisition, right? You might buy it and have a loan on the acquisition of $80,000, $85,000, but you might have a loan to your buyer of $90,000, $100,000, $110,000, $150,000. That spread right there can turn into money. That's a great thing to have, because it affects your net worth. It affects your ability to liquidate in the future. Sometimes you might want to do a note sale. You can always watch our note sale series to learn a little bit more about how you can liquidate these notes into cash if you do want to grab some cash quick. That's an excellent option for you. So you want to look at all three of these factors whenever you're creating your deal, whenever you're acquiring your deal. You want to see, what would my cash flow be, what would my down payment be, what's my equity going to be, and then and only then, when you understand the entire deal, can you make the decision to pull the trigger and to acquire that property. In owner financing, payments rule the game. When you're selling to an end buyer, the payment is really what it's all about for them. It's a lot like leasing a car. You know, people really care about what that monthly payment is going to be. If you see on all the commercials for car leases, they don't talk about anything but, hey, you can drive this Mercedes for $245 a month. That's how it is with owner financing in a lot of ways when you're selling to an end buyer, right? They do, of course, care what the purchase price is, but at the end of the day, their decision is going to be made off of if they can afford that monthly payment. Well, using that knowledge, that's going to be something that we're going to use on our acquisition as well. If we're going to be buying a property with owner financing, in other words, instead of us paying cash for a property, or instead of us wholesaling it and just contracting it and trying to flip that wholesale contract, if instead of doing that, we're going to offer the seller and say, okay, I'll buy your house, but I'm going to pay you, your $85,000 over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, the payments are going to matter there too. We've got to figure out how we're going to get them that money that we're promising to get them. And that's where backing into the deal comes into play, because we've got to figure out what we have to offer on a monthly basis to pay the overall purchase price that our seller wants to see. That number that goes on the contract that says, I'm buying your house for X, how are we going to pay that for them? And that's how we back into the deal. So let's look at that process. When we're backing into the deal, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start at the exit. Now, for today, I'm going to be assuming a owner financed sale, because that's going to be where the most gears are turning and really should get most of this education out to you. But as I always say, keep in mind, if you acquire a property with owner financing, that's great. You've acquired that property with owner financing, and now you can do anything you want with it. If you want to rent it, if you want to fix it up and sell it retail, whatever you want to do, that's your choice. But for today's example, I'm going to be using an owner financed sale, which would be wrapping our owner financed acquisition that we're analyzing right now. Okay? And so watch our wraps series to understand what a wraparound mortgage is. But for today, that's going to be less important, because we're really focusing on the acquisition. But we're starting at the exit. We need to know what we could sell it for, right? In this case, being an owner finance sale, we need to know what that sales price is going to be, and we need to know what that monthly payment is going to be that's coming in, because that's the money that we have to play with on our acquisition. Once we know that, the next step that we need to do is we need to back out our expenses. Now, in this case, the expenses that I'm going to back out are going to be the taxes and the insurance, because I'm looking at the monthly payment. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to give a monthly offer to an owner financed seller, right? So I'm going to take that payment that's coming in from my owner finance sale. I'm going to back out the taxes. I'm going to back out the insurance, any expenses that we have on a monthly basis. That's going to be our next step. After that, you need to back out your profits. What is it that you want to make on this deal? Because one of the beautiful parts about how you're negotiating and when you're acquiring these properties is that you get to decide what you're going to make on the deal. That's what your offer is based around. So if you want to make $200 a deal, back that out. Back that out of that monthly payment. And then what you're left with is your play. What you're left with is the money that you have to actually offer to your seller on a monthly basis. Now, one of the things that you will start to understand as you get into this business and as you start really using the calculator and looking through everything is that, one number is affected by three other numbers, right? You've got a payment, but the interest rate affects that, the principal affects that, the amortization affects that. You've got all kinds of stuff that goes into any one number, and this is what allows you to get really creative with things. So right now I'm focusing on our monthly payment to our seller, because that's going to be, at the end of the day, the hard part that we need to get to. That being said, obviously you've got to get your sales price with your seller down, right? You've got to get that actual dollar amount that says, hey, I'm going to buy your house for X from them. The reason I'm not going to focus too much on that today is because that's the part you're already used to doing. That's the part that's just the same as any other acquisition. You go through your negotiations, you find what the price is that your seller is comfortable with paying, with accepting for the house, and that's what you pay. Right? So we're going to just accept that we've got that number, and now that we've come to that agreement and we've said, okay, you're willing to sell me this house for $85,000. How am I going to pay you that $85,000? We've gotten to the point with our negotiations, and watch our negotiation series so that you can figure out how to lead into this position. But we've gotten them to the point where they've said, I want 85 grand, and I'm okay with you paying it to me over time. Right? So let's start. Let's actually analyze this deal some. Let's start at the exit. So the first thing that we need to see here is what our exit is. Now, with owner financing, our deal sits squarely in the middle of the retail comps for what you would sell it for on MLS, just retail, and your rental comps. You've got this kind of Venn diagram where your owner finance deal is right in between those, because with owner financing, we're not just talking about a purchase price. We're not just talking about selling it outright and getting cash like you would with the MLS. We're also talking about a monthly payment coming in. And the rental rates for that property are going to be what dictate that payment. Okay? If somebody's willing to pay $1,000 a month to rent that property, don't you think they'd be willing to pay $1,000 a month to buy that property? And a lot of times they might be willing to pay $1,050 a month to buy that property. Now, there's not too much more that you're going to go over the rental rate as a premium, but sometimes you can go over as a little bit of a premium. Premiums are typical, honestly. There's a lot of people that are charging more than the retail rate would be, both rental and retail sale, with an owner-financed house. Because what determines a value, right? Comparables determine values. When we look at comparables on MLS, we're looking at a group of houses that are being offered for sale that somebody has to go get their own financing for from Bank of America or from Wells Fargo or whatever and bring that cash to the table to buy that house. Well, owner financing is a little bit different than that, because we're wrapping the mortgage and the house together as one product and selling it to them that way, which is more valuable. Our approval process is a lot easier. We're able to approve a lot of people that the big banks can't. Watch the Dodd-Frank series so that you can understand why it is that we can approve certain things that the big banks can't. We are small creditors, and that works to our benefit, right? So when we have this package put together and we're able to offer that to somebody, it's worth more. Now, typically, there's about a 10% premium that can be added to an owner financed sale. If you look at a house and its MLS comps are $100,000, you could probably sell that house for $110,000. Now, be careful when you're doing this, though. Don't get greedy. My personal stance is to never go above that 10% if you're doing a premium, because we're asking for a 10% down payment, right, when we sell the property. So if we're going to sell it to them for 110% of the value, in other words, we're going to sell this $100,000 house comp for $110,000, well, then we're going to get a 10% down payment. So they're going to give us $11,000 at this point in time, and their loan would then be for $99,000. Well, that loan now is really no different than if they were a VA and got into this house with a 0 down payment loan, right? Because their loan is now what the value of the house would be on MLS. I do not want to put somebody into a house where they're underwater immediately. That said, there's nothing in the law that says that you can't charge whatever you want to charge, right? There's nothing in the law that says you can't sell that $100,000 house for $150,000. I don't think that that's the right move to do, but you can, right? Because at the end of the day, what is something worth? What somebody's willing to pay for it. So at this point in time, we're looking at what we're going to sell the property for in order to back in. I don't want you to be greedy. I don't want you to really shoot for those big premiums. And that being said, that we can charge the premiums, what I want you to do is I want you to run your model based on selling the property at 100% of its value. Not 110, not 115, not 105, but 100. The reason why is that this is the conservative approach. If you look at selling a house at $100,000 that's worth $100,000, and you run all your numbers based on that, and you make your offer to your seller based on selling your house for, on the back end for 100, well, if they accept that offer and then it turns out that you are able to sell for a 105 or 110, that's all great. That works out better for you because now you have room. The flip side is if you say, look, hey, this property over here is a prime area. I know I can sell it for 105. I know I can sell it for $110,000. Therefore, I'm going to back into the deal and I'm going to run my model using 105 or using 110. Okay, so you back everything out, you make your offer based on that 110 or based on that 105, you make your offer, your seller accepts it, you start going on it, and then come to find out for whatever reason you can't sell it for 105 or 110. Well, you've backed yourself into a corner at this point in time. You have to sell this property at over market value or else you don't make the money that you had planned on making in the first place. So we always want to be conservative. When we're backing into a deal, when we're doing our analysis to try and purchase a property, we want to use conservative numbers. We know that this is on the market for $100,000. That's what we're going to say we can sell it for. If we're running our amortizations and trying to find our payment for our end buyer, we're going to use a 30-year amort because that's going to give us the lowest payment, right? Which is our most conservative approach. and we're going to make our offer based off of that. And then we're going to hope that we can get more in the background on the back end, but that becomes gravy, not a necessity at that point in time. As far as comping your properties goes, use Propelio.com. I mean, I know I'm standing in front of this giant backdrop of Propelio, and but I promise I'm not getting financial gain from you going to Propelio.com. And I've been a big proponent of theirs for a long time, even before this academy was even getting started, before we were doing these video series with them, because I myself, as somebody with true MLS access, will tell you the Propelio system is just way better. Just frankly, I mean, the mobile system for sure knocks MLS out of the park. And then your ability to go in there and really get things done quickly for you and have it already wrapped into your CRM is just incredible. So really, go look at Propelio.com, sign up for that, get your comps from there. If you're not a realtor, even if you are a realtor, even if you do have MLS access. I mean, I use Propelio as much, if not more, than my regular MLS access, because the GUI is just that much better. So take a look at that, get your comps from there, get some accuracy in your numbers, because that's going to be really important whenever you're acquiring these properties. So let's look at this deal. Let's look at an actual property and kind of back ourselves in. So on this deal, we're going to say that it comps out at $100,000, and we're going to say that the rental rates for it would be $10.50 a month. Okay. Now our seller has told us that they want $85,000. There's no way that they're going to sell it to us for anything less than $85,000. We've done all the negotiations that we can, and the reason that I've chosen that number is that it kills our ability to do anything cash-based. You should never buy a house for cash at 85% of its value. I say you should never. Speaking in absolutes is a difficult thing to do, because there's always some reason why something might make sense, and I could go into some of those here, but I'm just going to, for now, we're going to say don't do 85% purchases. If you're doing cash, fix and flips, conventional wisdom says 70, 75%, you want to stay below. If you're doing the buy and holds, lots of people right now are in the 80, 82% range. 85 kind of kicks you out of that. So now we're looking at owner financing. Now we're trying to figure out the owner financed option that we have, because that's what we're left with. So we've started at the exit. We found what it's going to sell for. We found what it's going to rent for. Our next step is, let's look at that rental payment and let's start backing out our expenses like taxes and insurance. Okay? So taxes. We want to look for exemptions. If you're going to go to your central appraisal district online, you're going to look up this property, and you're going to see what the annual taxes are for that property. Now, watch our tax video so that you can learn the details of how to really go in there and how you can actually calculate these taxes out, even if there are exemptions available on there. But what you're looking for when you get to that central appraisal district and you find your property, what you're looking for is a box like this. Now on DCAD, I took the screenshot from the Dallas the Dallas County CAD. This is what it would look for. What you want to see is you want to see that taxable value line that I've got marked over in red. And if that taxable value line on any one of the columns shows anything less than the full taxable value that it shows likely at the top of the page, because it will say what the market value is, what the land value is, and what the combined value is. It's land and improvement, and then market value is how they list that. If any of these lines have anything listed other than the market value, there's an exemption being taken on that property. It might be a homestead exemption, might be over 65, something like that. But that means that you can't trust the total number that it's telling you for your annual insurance as what the annual insurance is going to be once you've acquired it. Because you're not going to be able to have that homestead exemption on it. And your end buyer may have that homestead exemption on it, but that doesn't really matter right now. We need to be conservative. We need to think, okay, if my taxes are as expensive as they're going to get, what will it be, right? So on this case, we do have exemptions. You see one says it's $84,000. We've got a 67, a 73, that kind of stuff. Again, watch the tax video to figure out how to run your non-exempts. At the end of the day, it says that our total taxes are $2,057 here. And I'm just going to run with that number. I'm just going to say that's what we've got going on, and we're going to run that number as our monthly tax income, or tax payment, I'm sorry. So now we get to replace one of these questions here with a number. Now we know that we've got $171 every month, that whenever we acquire this property, we're going to need to pay that $171 every month. The next step is to look at our insurance. Now when we're running our insurance, because we're trying to find our monthly bills here, we need to find the premium from the exit. Because again, when we're backing in, we want to find how we're going to make cash flow on this deal. We're comparing everything to our exit. We're looking at the end of the day, how is this going to sell? What are the expenses going to look like? And then we're backing out of that. So we want to use the premium from our exit. And in this case, our exit is an owner financed sale. What we want to do is we want to run a 1.5% of the loan amount, and that's going to be the annual premium. That's going to be the annual premium for our end buyer, okay? So, as the example here, if we've got a $100,000 sale, we're taking a 10% down payment. That means we've got a loan for $90,000. If we do $90,000 times 0.0175, that comes out to $1,575 a year and about $131 each month in expenses. So now we've got our tax and insurance expenses taken care of. If we had any other monthly expenses, like an HOA or servicing or anything like that, we would want to insert that here and back that or put that into our equation as well. So we know now what our exit is. We know that we've got a sale of 100 and a payment of 1050. We know what our expenses are going to be on a monthly basis. We've got the taxes and the insurance taken care of. Now we need to back out our profits. Now, for backing out your profit, you've got to figure out what your minimum cash flow is going to be. I personally have a rule of thumb of about $150. Each deal that I do, I want to make at least $150 a month on that deal, okay? But that might be different for you, and that's okay. Whenever I got started, I was doing deals where I was only making $50, $60 a month because I needed deals under my belt. I needed to get those done, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But now I'm at a point where I'm looking for $150 a deal minimum, and that's my rule of thumb. Might break it for different situations, but that's the rule of thumb. This becomes a situational known because, like I said, I might break that rule. I want $150 a month. That's great. That's what I'm shooting for. But what if I look at this deal and I'm only getting $75 a month, but I've got $125,000 in equity in the deal? Well, of course, that's going to be something that I'm willing to do because, okay, I'm not making that much cash flow, but I've got a lot of equity here. That helps my net worth. That helps my ability to cash out later. If I wanted to sell this note, I've got room to sell this note and get a giant chunk of cash on here. What if my end buyer refinances down the road? I'm going to get a check for $125,000 in the mail, right? So there are reasons why you might break that. Watch the rule of thumb video because we're going to talk about different rules of thumb and why you might break those, just to kind of get your mind wrapped around that. But you decide for yourself what your minimum cash flow is going to be and insert that in. So now we're looking at our deal. We've got $100,000 sales comps. We know that our seller wants $85,000, and we know that we've got a rental comp of $1050 a month. So we need to take that $1050 and we need to start backing into our deal using that number. So we found that we've got $1050 less the taxes, less the insurance, less the monthly cash flow, and what that leaves us with is the amount of money that we have to play with to acquire the property. That leaves us with our monthly payment maximum that we can make to buy this house. And in this case, that payment is $597.30. So now we filled in all the kind of question marks that we had surrounding this deal. We know what our taxes are, we know what our insurance is, we know what our monthly cash flow should be, and that leaves us with $597 a month. So now that we have this number, this magical $597 number, that tells us, okay, this is what I can offer to my seller for them to sell me this house. I'm going to buy it from them for $85,000, and I'm going to pay them $597 a month to do that. But you have to answer some questions now. You have to take this even one more step as you're backing in. You've got to figure out how fast they want that paid off. You've got to figure out what kind of interest rate you're going to pay them, and you're going to figure out how fast you can pay that off. Okay? How fast you want to pay that off. Because those are going to be two different answers a lot of times. Here's one of my favorite negotiation questions ever. I stumbled on this one as I was negotiating with somebody. I said, ooh, I like that one. I'm going to start using that one, and I have, and it's done really well for me. Do you have any immediate and pressing financial needs, like a broken down car that needs fixing, medical bills, something like that? By giving them these priority items and filling them saying, hey, if you're going to ask me for cash today, it needs to be for a good reason. Medical bills, broken down car, something like that. Most of the time when you ask that question, you'll get a no. No, I don't really have anything super need. Or you'll get, yeah, I just need money for my deposit at my new, where I'm going to go rent or, whatever. It's not going to turn out to be a whole lot usually. This helps you kind of nip in the bud some of the future negotiation points that may have typically come up before, where it's like, okay, hey, I can give you $85,000 and I can give you $597 a month, and they're like, yeah, and I need $20,000 of that down, right? By preemptively asking them, do you have any immediate cash needs like this, it gets them in their mind to say, I've got no reason to ask this guy for $20,000 down, right? So that really helps you with your down payment, because we want to keep as much of the down payment on our sales side as we possibly can. I don't want to give up that money. I like my today money, right? I want to buy a house with owner financing without having to put cash on the line and just leverage out those payments. Now, if you want to put more cash down and pay that loan off quickly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good idea. Go for it. But it's nice to have the option to leverage that out and turn this into a longer-term cash flow play. The hairy arm principle is something that I use a lot in my negotiations, and it's a great principle to use to get what you want out of things. So watch our hairy arm principle video so that you can see how to really employ this in real estate, how I employ this all the time to get 0% interest loans with my sellers. But for now, I'm just going to throw numbers out at you. You can watch those videos to see how I'm getting to these, but for now, we're just going to throw out the numbers. So let's look at how we're going to create our terms for this offer. We know that we've got $597 a month to deal with, right? So now we need to figure out what we're going to offer as far as interest goes. Now, I typically offer 4.5% to start with. I think it's a good area to begin with, because you're shooting typically better than what the interest rates are in the market right now. I mean, obviously interest rates are going to go up in the future, and that might change at that point in time. But for now, using that 4.5% interest is a good tool, because now we're throwing something else at them. Interest is not something they are typically thought about in the past or really been wanting. They wanted to sell their house for $85,000, and you're saying, okay, well, I'll pay a monthly payment for it, and I'll give you interest for that. And this is kind of takes them off of puts them on their heels, gives them something else. You're offering something they didn't ask for. It's a concession before asking for that concession, and that helps you in your corner. And as you watch the hairy arm principle, you'll see exactly why I'm doing that. Sellers rarely want to go over 10 years in their amortization to you. When you're acquiring a property with seller financing, typically they want you to have them totally paid off within 10 years. Sometimes that's doable, sometimes that's not. Sometimes you can pay them off a lot quicker than that. But your starting position should always be what's going to be most favorable to you. And in my case, I typically like to start off with like a 30-year amort, because I know when we're selling it to our end buyer, we're going to sell it to them with a 30-year loan, right? So that's kind of our maximum on acquisition, because I don't want to acquire for a longer period loan than I'm selling, because what's going to happen is if this loan goes to term, in 30 years, they're all paid off with me and I'm still having to pay a loan over here. That means I have to pay them off in a total chunk of money to get that entirely paid off. And we don't want to do that. So long story long, just cap out your acquisition mortgage at the same amount of time that your sales mortgage would be, which 360 months, 30 years is typically going to be that. Try to avoid down payments. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We like our today money. Today money is a big part of this. We want today money and we want tomorrow money. We want to get that down payment in, and we want to get our cash flow. So we're going to avoid ever bringing up a down payment. If a down payment is getting brought up, it's going to be because they brought it up. Avoid ever talking about like, hey, I can buy this house for $85,000 and give you $597 a month, and I'll throw in an extra $5,000 up front. If you need to, go for it. But that should be a back pocket tool. That should be something that you're going to come up with down the line, and not just offer up right from the front. In order to do these offers, you've got to know how to use your financial calculator. And I've got a video on how to use the 10B2 financial calculator, so please watch that. Figure out how to use this calculator, because it is the lifeblood of your business. It is what everything revolves around. But for now, I'm going to assume that you know how to use that. And if you don't, you can pause this video, go watch the calculator video, and come back and finish watching this. But we're going to go through the calculations using the information that we've just gained through the first part of this video. We're going to use our calculator to figure out what it means in brass tacks, what it means, what we're actually going to put on the contract to buy. So here's our calculator. We just figured out that we have the ability to pay them $597 a month, right? So we're going to put that into our payment. We know that they want $85,000 for this property, so we're going to put $85,000 into the PV. I said earlier that we like to start off with a 4.5% interest rate. So I'm going to throw 4.5 in there, and then I'm going to solve for the amount of time. Well, what we see here is we've got an amount of time of 203 months. which is under the 360 that I said earlier, right? This means that we would pay them off in under 20 years. I'm sorry, a little bit over 20 years, right? 240? No, under, sorry. So we would pay them off in a little bit under 20 years on this, but I'm okay with pushing out to 30, right? I'm okay with going out to 30 years on these things. So what if I change that number to 30? Well, that's going to affect something else. The way that this calculator goes is when you change one number, it's got to change another number. What I want it to change is my payment. I want to lower my payment on the acquisition so that I can make more cash flow. So that's going to turn that 597 number, and it's going to change whenever I go to 360. It's going to change that to 430, which bumps up our cash flow to where now we're making $316 a month instead of $150 a month, which was what we initially ran our model based off of. And that's great. So that's where we're going to make our offer. We're going to say, okay, perfect. I can pay you $85,000, $430 a month for the next 30 years. Now you have to evaluate, does this meet your seller's needs? Let me tell you something. You will not know if it meets your seller's needs unless you make the offer. So many times students of mine, I do personal mentoring, so many times students of mine will talk themselves out of making an offer. Well, they'll never accept that. And I'll say, oh, well, did you ask them? No, they'll never accept it. Did you ask them? And when they go back and ask them, they get the offer accepted. You don't know that person as well as that person. If you don't ask, you don't get, okay? But go ahead and ask. And if it doesn't meet their needs, what needs to change? That's when you start having to evaluate and having to switch things up. Well, here's the thing. Get creative, guys. You've got so many options. You can accept less cash flow. You can use your down payment for a down payment on theirs. You can adjust the interest rate. You can do interest-only payments. You can do delayed payments. You can change your contract price. There's so much you can do to get creative and find a solution that works for both of you. You just have to start changing numbers. And this is where knowing that calculator inside and out becomes so valuable. So in this case, we're going to go back to our initial offer. We said that we were going to do a $597 payment for 203 months at 4.5% interest. But let's say that the seller says, heck no, absolutely not. I will not have a loan go out for that long. Okay? So what can you do to adjust that? Well, the first thing that I'm going to do to adjust is look at my interest. I offered 4.5% interest. They didn't ask for 4.5% interest. So now I get to concede something. Now I get to say, okay, now I get a concession from them. Now I say, okay, I tried to give you interest, but you're asking me to give you a faster payoff. I can do that, but I can't pay you interest. Boom. Do zero interest. That backs my payments down from 203 months now down to 142 months. Does that work for them? Let's say they say, heck no, I still need to get it paid off quicker. You know, what can you do? We have to get this paid off. So the next thing I'm going to look at is our principal value. Now, again, my exit that I'm running this whole model off of is based off of the fact that I'm going to go off and I'm going to sell it owner financed, right? And when I sell it, I'm going to get a $10,000 down payment. When I get a $10,000 down payment, I'm going to net $7,000, and you can watch our initial videos to learn where these nets are coming from. But I'm going to net about $7,000. So what if I use that $7,000, that down payment, to give my seller a little bit to get this contract price down? What if I gave them a down payment? So now instead of having a loan to my seller for $85,000, it's $85,000 minus the 7. Now we've got a loan to them for $78,000 at 0% interest, and it brings it down to 130 months, right? That's pretty quick. Now, there's another option here. What if even now they say, no, I can't do it, it's got to get paid off as quickly as humanly possible? Well, at that point in time, the only thing left to adjust would be our payment, right? Initially, we ran our model saying that we were going to accept a $150 cash flow every month. If we want this deal and our seller needs to get it paid off more quickly, are you willing to accept less of a cash flow? What if you only accepted 100? What if you only accepted 50? Is there a reason that's going to make you want to do that? Yeah. What if this $85,000 purchase price was there, but your house is worth $250,000? Okay, I'm okay with not accepting cash flow for, whatever, 8 years, because I've got so much equity in it. This is now a truly long-term play, right? So there's so many different things that you can look at, and I want you to just start playing with your calculator and start trying to think of every possible reaction that a seller may have and how you might combat that by looking at these numbers and seeing how you would adjust them. here's the thing. At the end of the day, we don't gamble, we invest. We're real estate investors. So if a deal doesn't work, a deal doesn't work. Don't make emotional decisions. Don't make a decision because you just really want this deal. You've got to make a decision because it makes money. I've got so many people that come to me as new investors that see a deal, and you know, maybe you're not used to seeing deals, and you're like, oh, I've got to have it, and it just devolves into this crap deal that is not good for the investor, but they want to say that they closed on a deal and they do it anyway and they lose money. We don't lose money. We don't gamble. We invest. Okay. So again, download the creativecashflow.com Whetstone. That's a great practice tool because you're going to be able to run all the numbers inside of it and see exactly how this deal works from every aspect, even with all these gears turning, so that you can have it right in front of you and make your decision on whether or not that's a good acquisition, and make your decision on how you're going to make that offer to your seller to get it to something that works for them. All right. So guys, keep in touch with us. Like I always say, you know, Propelio.com is an excellent resource. There's some wonderful forums on there that you can go and learn from. I myself, I'm a personal mentor. You know, you can sign up to have, you know, me hold your hand through your deals and all that kind of good stuff. We've got the video series available for you on creativecashflow.com. Find us, find Propelio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. Go give us a like, share us, all that kind of fun stuff. But until then, keep watching these videos and keep learning, and we'll talk to you next time. Sweet. How's that Facebook Live? Are we still Facebook Living?
Yeah, we are. Good job.
Thank you.
One thing I was going to say is, forgot what I was going to say.
Don't suck so hard.
No.
Can you maybe do better next time?
That was good. He's done a ton of these videos. What number video was that? Like
this is
87th?
about the third. Yeah. Well, so far done. This is about the 30th one.
He's done about 30.
Yeah.
All those will be on the Propelio Academy. We don't have links for that yet because it's not live quite yet. So just, you know, stay tuned. Stay on the Facebook. Stay on the Instagrams, the Twitters, the YouTubes.
And ultimately, this is a 110-part series that we're doing here. So we've got
you're gonna get a lot of Grant.
A lot of Grant. Yeah. Lucky you.
But anyway, did we have any questions or any kind of whatever's?
I think we already covered everything that came through, so unless anybody out here is live that wants some questions answered, let us know.
Yeah.
But anyway, biggest thing is make sure if you have interest in this, reach out to Grant, but also just keep in mind that when we get the Propelio Academy live, y'all stay tuned to that.
It's gonna be great stuff, guys. Really, I mean, I can vouch just by knowing the people that they're bringing in here. You're getting some big dogs sharing some big information. So really do keep in touch. Keep your eye out for all the stuff that's gonna be coming and getting released because you're gonna learn a lot from it.